Hello and welcome to another episode of the Romantasy Readers Podcast. I'm Allie and I am joined, as always, by my wonderful co-host Nicole. But we
Hello.
have a very, very special guest for you today. As we are going through our ONYX Storm prep, I have to get my brain right. We are bringing on special guests to talk to you guys about some of their favorite theories with ONYX Storm. So please welcome, Carly. How are you doing today, Carly? Woo! I feel
I
like we
am
need
good. I'm so
clapping.
excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me. This is so exciting.
I'm so excited that you're here because Carly has some of the most in-depth Empyrean theories that I've ever seen. She even started a podcast about it, which we'll talk a little bit about at the end about how you can find her. But she is always posting her theories about Fourth Wing and Iron Flame and now ONYX Storm. Tell us a little bit about your Empyrean journey. How did you find the books and what got you into the theories?
Yeah, I think what I love about the book so much is that they felt serendipitous to me because I had like an emergency spinal injury and I had emergency surgery on my spine and we didn't know like how much of my left leg I was going to regain, and I was on pretty intense bed rest after surgery. And Fourth Wing was released, I think, a week after I was put on bed rest. And I didn't know anything about it. I hadn't heard about it. I wasn't on Bookstagram yet. I didn't know anything about this book, and I was just on Instagram in general, kind of scrolling, and people were talking about this book, and I was like, "Oh, it sounds interesting." And I'm in bed and I'm really bored, and I need something to read.
Absolutely.
And so I sent my husband out to go buy it. Got the very last one in the whole county.
Oh
The
my
guy was
god.
like, "Yeah, he's like, just so you know, you got the last one in the whole county." And my husband was like, "What's going on with this book?" And
Yeah.
I read it immediately and devoured it, and I just kind of like felt so connected to Violet because like I all of a sudden had all of these people in my life being like, "You can't do this, you can't do that," and everybody was trying to tell Violet what she could and couldn't do. And obviously, everybody in my life had like a very good reason for being like, "Don't do that because you're going to hurt yourself because you're supposed to be on bed rest. Like, you're not supposed to be on a step ladder right now. Like, get down." and, um, and so I just felt very connected to her, that feeling of being like, I'm physically different. Everybody's and their mother is telling me what I can and can't do. And I just want to be able to do the things I feel like I can do. And as like I read those books and recovered, and then I was going through physical therapy, and then Iron Flame came out, and I was reading Iron Flame, and like right around the time I was reading about Andarna, finding out like that her wing was never probably going to be exactly the way it needed to be in order to
Yeah.
support a rider. I was finding out like that some of the nerve damage was permanent, and like I wasn't going to get like full feeling back. And I was like, oh, okay, like this is kind of my life now. And so I just had to learn to kind of like live
That's
with it. And,
amazing.
everything about these
Yeah.
books just felt weirdly serendipitous for how my life was going at the moment. It was
That's
like my physicality.
yeah.
And I just loved them so much. And I loved all the Easter eggs. I loved how she did foreshadowing. Yeah. And so I just fell in love with them. And
Yeah.
so I just
That's
kept reading them.
amazing.
I've read them
I
so many
mean,
times now.
I'm so sorry that you obviously had that experience and that health setback. That's so hard, but it's amazing. Like, all of us felt such a connection to Fourth Wing and Iron Flame when they came
Mhm.
out, and the connection to, I say, Violet and this whole world and these characters, and fell in love with it. But to have it, to hear about the impact it has for people that are going through health issues and challenges at a time, and having that ability to feel connected to a character that, even though they have all these setbacks and have people telling them that they can't do things, continuing to be brave and continuing to take the risks that they want to take and take the challenges they want to take. And it's beautiful. And it's something about, I was only thinking about it today, about how so many people talk about mental health and how much these books are more helpful to them, like romantasy in general, compared to like self-help books. You read a self-help book and it just tells you everything you should be doing to make your life amazing. And all I do is like, I think, give you anxiety and stress. And then you'll read these romantasy books that take you to this other world and give you these brave, amazing characters pushing through challenges. And that, I know for me, that's better for my mental health than it is for anything else. But it's amazing to hear that it obviously had such a personal impact for you going through such a challenging time.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think they kind of came in like right when I needed them, and yeah, and I love them so much. I've read them probably too many times by anybody's
No such
standards.
thing.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I think having books that kind of teach you that, like, wherever you're at in life, you can figure out how to do things in your own way, and
Absolutely.
that's always important.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and I love that Rebecca Yarros created a character with, a chronic condition, because, like,
Mhm.
she has to learn to live with that, and she's doing it in a
Yeah.
magical world, which I wish we all could do, but, it's just it's such a unique take and perspective on a heroine, and I think so many people resonate with it because of that. Um, so
Mhm.
it's fantastic. Well, that is, like, the best story ever. Um,
People are
we are gonna
fighting them
talk.
out.
I know, right? I just read it because I was like, "Oh, everybody's talking about this book, I should read it," you know?
Yeah.
We are gonna talk today about signets. So, we're gonna kinda do, like, a deep dive on signets because I think those are very critical, and I think a lot of us are hoping that we get some specific answers on signets in the next book. Before we go too deep into the signet conversation, we here on Romantic Readers, we start every podcast with what we're currently reading. And I thought I would ask you the same thing. So, what are you currently reading right now, Carly? Are you doing a reread or are you reading something different?
So I'm currently reading A Fate Inked in Blood by Danielle Jensen, and I am really liking it. I think I'm about 50% through, and I was just saying that it's really great if you love like Nordic mythology, like Norse,
Yeah.
Vikings, that kind of stuff. I love it. I'm a huge mythology nerd, so it's been really fun for me.
Yes. We have both read that book. We loved it. We covered it on the podcast and we even got to interview Danielle Jensen herself, which was
I
amazing.
I saw that and I want to watch the episode so bad, but I wanted to read the book first because
Yes,
I didn't
no,
want
you
spoilers.
definitely
And I
should
was like,
read the book.
Definitely a good way
I
to go.
it's
Definitely.
gonna be the first thing I do after I finish the book is I'm gonna listen to that episode.
Yeah, yeah. We definitely have, like, a spoiler zone with her, but that book is
Yeah.
really, really good, and I'm so
Mhm.
excited for the second book to come out, like, I
Yeah,
cannot
yeah.
wait.
And it's one of her most successful series. I think we sort of said as long as you've read like kind of the Bridge Kingdom and those books and A
Mhm.
Fate Inked in Blood, then you're right to listen to that interview. We always do the spoiler free section at the beginning, but you want to
Yeah.
enjoy the whole thing. So read the book, and it's so quick to. I find Danielle's books so quick to go through. Like they're very easy to read,
Yeah,
and I just go
Mhm.
through them so quickly. So I'm sure it won't be very long, and you'll have that finished.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Nicole,
think
what
her
are you
world building
reading?
is really cool.
Oh,
I have just started The Order of Masks, which is by Lena Bell Chambers, which is an Australian author. And I've had this book sitting there on my TBR. It has the most beautiful cover. And I've just kind of gone, okay, I'm actually going to pick this up and give this a try. And so far, I'm only like an eighth of the way into it. But it's very intriguing, very court intrigue at the moment.
ooh,
So I will let you know. But this is like more of a bit more of an indie author kind of situation. But no, I'm loving it so far. It's really, really good.
that's awesome. Yeah, I can't
And how
wait to
about you,
hear.
Ali?
I'm dreading answering this
Hi,
question
puppy.
because I know Nicole I know what Nicole's gonna say. She's gonna be so disappointed in me because she's been begging me to read Twisted Throne by Danielle Jensen, the newest book in the Bridge Kingdom series. And I started another hockey romance. Nicole, it's
Which
like
one?
every single week, Nicole's like, "Please read that book." And I'm like, "It'll be my next book, I swear it." And then I finished it just I'm in my hockey romance era, okay? I'm, like, really into them.
I
Um,
love hockey romance. I got a whole stack of
yeah.
them.
Yeah, this one's
Mhm.
called Behind the Net.
Oh,
It's like the Vancouver Stars series, and
Ooh.
it's a
okay.
goalie, so I hadn't read a goalie before,
Mm.
so, I'm reading a goalie hockey romance, and I'm just gonna stop promising Nicole that I'll read The Twisted Throne.
If
I
you want
also
another
picked up the
Australian hockey romance,
audiobook.
let me
I picked up the
know.
audiobook for I've always been like, I need to read a Brandon Sanderson novel. Like, I really need to, he's the epitome of fantasy. And I'm like, I really have to try it. I sort of saw the audiobook and I was like, you know what? I've got a few spare credits. I'm just going to get it. But it's huge. Like, it is like 48 hours of listening and it's pretty in depth. And my brain keeps kind of, I don't know, maybe it's one of those, I'm not sure if you should actually listen to it or read it because it's so complex. I'm almost like, because if I keep zoning out and going checking my phone, I'm not absorbing the whole story, but it's very, very big, complex world. So I'll get back on what that one's like.
Yeah, nice. I have not read any Brandon Sanderson. Everyone is telling me to read it, but I'm just like, there's no spice. Like, I'll just stick with my little romantasy books.
No, I need that little romance hit to just kind of draw me in to like the bigger world. Like, I love the bigger world and everything, but the romance just gives me that cheap little thrill that I need just to like connect to the story. Just makes it extra exciting.
Okay. We are going to talk about signets. I'm super excited for this. So first we're going to talk about just like an overview because, some people who listen to this do not reread the books a million times like the three of us do. So let's just give the listeners kind of an overview of like generally the things that we know about signets. So I'm going to let Carly start since she's our special guest and then
and
Nicole,
subject matter expert.
Yeah, you can jump in, but Carly, walk us through what you know about signets.
I would say I probably know too much. I feel like at this point, and I feel like I'm worried I'm going to say things that aren't actually canon because I just feel like I have so many theories at this point. But Rebecca keeps reiterating in interviews that signets are a reflection of the writer, that they are a combination of the chemistry of the dragon and the writer, and that they represent who they are at their core and their deep internal needs.
Yeah.
I question that though because we've seen a few people in family lines have the same or very similar signets.
That's true. So that is very interesting that you question it.
I'm wondering how much of it has to do. I mean, I think I don't know. I think that there is something about family lines out there that like we don't know yet because I keep seeing it. So
yeah,
because we see that with Clint. She has the same exact signet.
It's supposed to be a reflection of this like unique bond that happens between writer and dragon, right? It's supposed to be when you pair with a writer, you get this very unique bond, and that is what creates or manifests the signet, and it is a reflection of the writer. But you're right, and it is also interesting that look at us. We're already diving into theories. We can't help ourselves. It's interesting to me that bonding the same writer or in like the same family line is kind of a taboo. And they say it's a taboo because it will like make the writer potentially go insane, right? Like lose their mind. I think that's what it is. Yeah, go mad.
But like what if but I think madness means venom because I think that they just like they can't tell them they'll turn venom. So they'll be like, oh no, we'll go mad. And it's like, is that what's happening though? Or is that how the original venom were created?
Interesting. Because a lot of history has been lost, hasn't it? And look, and it's interesting what you say, because even when you think about Violet and her mum, her mother, she has like sort of the storm power. Like she's sort of, her power is, but then Violet's is lightning. So they're very similar. Yeah, they're very similar. Whether it's just that they've got similar characteristics and personality because they are related and that, or whether it actually has something to do with their bloodline, I guess that's something we have to wait and see.
Well, Violet and Mira's power is also really similar because Violet's power is to channel pure power, which is the only thing that can stop venom. The wards are pure power because they're channeling pure power, and Mira is a ward. So in some ways, they are both pure power. They're just
different sides of the same coin sort of thing.
They're just they're just using it differently. And both of their powers are blue.
Yeah. I know. That
Mhm.
is interesting for sure. Um, okay, what else do we know about signets, kind of big picture? We know that they potentially Rebecca Yarros has said that they reflect what you need. So, what do people
Mhm.
need? And like, Violet needs power because she feels powerless a lot of the time, so she gets pure power. Um, Xaden needs to know who to trust, who not to trust, so he gets
Mhm.
this ability to read intentions. I think that this like concept of what do you need, I feel like that's ripe for theories, because then people of course love to say, well, what else do people need?
Yeah. Well, and I also think that there's kind of something there to say, like, how much of what you truly need actually shapes who you are. Like,
Yeah.
because like they're saying, like it's a reflection of who you are at your core, but how much is who you are what you deeply need? And so I think that there's
Mm.
something there to say, like, that those things are very intrinsically linked, and you really can't unentwine them. Like
Yeah.
that they're just too closely related.
Totally.
Yeah.
100%.
Mhm.
Okay, do we know anything else about signets? I feel like that's like the highlights. It's like the dragon, it's like the unique connection of the writer, reflects the writer,
Mhm.
reflects what they need. You can go mad from your signet if you bond
Mhm.
a dragon who previously bonded a relative. Do we know anything else about signets?
I mean, I think other than just that, like, you can have more than one apparently, we don't know the limit.
Apparently. Yeah.
Yeah, apparently you can, and, that the relic is what they're channeling the magic through. So, like, their relic is their conduit
Yes.
for their magic, for their signet.
Yes. And I think whether we talk, but we can just talk about it now, but we could also talk about it later. I think
Mhm.
um there there is also this potential idea or theory that because the marked ones, the rebellion kids, have a
Mhm.
relic, that
Yeah.
they can then channel through that other relic and have a second signet. And this is maybe confirmed by a moment at the end of Fourth Wing where Liam appears to channel ice. And that is not
Yes.
Liam's signet. His signet is
Mhm.
Farsight, or
Farsight.
seeing Farsight. I was like, I can't remember the exact word for
Mhm.
it. Now, a lot of people are like, oh, it's just an editing error because Riddick has ice power, but I'm not so sure. I
Mhm.
don't know. I'm
I know
pretty
it's
on board with the theory that the relic, the marked ones, have another signet through that relic.
yeah. Yeah. Actually, I'm almost
Yeah.
tempted to play almost a semi game here for a minute and just go around and see if we can say all the signets that we know that exist, especially the powerful ones or the rare ones that we maybe don't hear as much about. Do you feel like would that be too much of a challenge, or do you think we could go around and see if we can see how
We can
many we can
try it.
remember?
I will do my best.
Yeah.
I'm never good at remembering what they're called. I remember what they do, but I don't remember what they like the official name is.
That's right. We don't have specific names. It can be just like ice power or
Yeah, ice power.
intrinsically we remember it. Yeah, it's like you don't have to be fancy about it. You can be like flames. Yeah. So let's see how we can go around and see if we can remember some of the important signets that we know of in the Fourth Wing world. All right. All right. I will start. Intrinsic. Allie.
Well, there's a lot of things with intrinsic. See, as soon as you say that, I'm like, okay, but there's this kind of intrinsic, there's this kind of intrinsic, but I'll just keep it high level. I mean, obviously, I'm just going to group a lot of things together, which is like some elemental magic. So there's like people can metal wield, they can ice wield, they can do storms. Like there's kind of a whole grouping of like
You've just named three.
elemental. Yeah, I just named three. Okay, that's
Mhm.
mine.
Yeah,
Carly.
and
What is
just to mention too on the elementals, I always think it's weird though that they specify that there's water wielding and ice wielding, like that those maybe
Are
are
separate.
two different
Yeah, I know, that is
types
really
of
weird.
signets. Yeah.
And, like, what
I
do
mean,
you need in your life to be an ice wielder? I don't think that that's ever described,
yeah,
like, versus what you
yeah.
need in your life to be a water
I
wielder. I don't know.
I'm like, are they supposed to be the same thing, or are ice wielders just stronger water wielders? I wonder. I think about that like every day. Uh,
Yeah.
but I think one of the more miscellaneous ones that people forget about is the ability to take away speech. That's a signet.
Oh, yeah. Who
what
has
is it?
that?
The voice. What was that?
They're
To
never named. It's just a
Okay.
random cadet during one of their squad challenges, but they're never
They
named.
can somebody
Wow.
just can't speak anymore. They like
Yeah,
Yeah.
they can
can
take
beat
away
someone
people's
else.
ability to speak.
I did not remember that one at all, so that's good.
Really creepy.
And
I
then
know, it
we've
is
got
really creepy.
ones. Yeah. And then we've got ones like the Truthsayer,
Mhm.
that we kind of know they're kind of like your second most concerning. Like they sort of say that the intrinsics are like illegal, but the Truthsayers are allowed, but they're still quite questionable as to why that power is allowed. Another thing, going to like powers that you need, I don't really know even why Xaden has shadow powers, except for the reasons that we, of course, know why we love him having shadow powers. But like, apart from it being an extremely powerful signet, it's not like, does he need it apart from power? Like, is that sort of ever explained?
Well, he does
I
need to like sneak around a lot. That's how I've always
yeah.
like thought of it. Is
Yeah.
he just needs to be sneaky. Sneaky
I have
Xaden.
a bunch on this, but I have it in my Xaden section notes, so I'll save it for when we get there.
Yeah, no, good idea.
Yeah.
We always get ahead of ourselves on this podcast.
Yeah, I do too.
There's like I'll just say like precognition. There's that one. That's like Melgren's, which I have never really
Mhm.
understood, to be honest with you. Like I understand the concept. I don't really grasp, like it just doesn't ring for me that he can know the outcome of battles, but then he still goes into them. Like I don't know. I'm not it confuses me a lot.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I I think the
And
thing people get confused about that too is, like, he doesn't know when they happen, so I'm like, "Well, how can you prepare for things like, if you don't know when it's gonna be?" I don't know, it always confused
Yeah.
me.
It's very
yeah,
confusing to me too.
yeah, yeah. And then there's distance wielding that we've
Mhm.
heard about but never really seen before. Are there any other rare, powerful ones that we've heard of that maybe something to consider for Violet? Or have you got any others that you know of?
Well, I personally think she's gonna be a truthsayer, so I think
Mhm.
you already said that one. But
Yeah.
I mean, like, there's a kind of opposite of distance wielding, which is what Rhiannon does, where, like, she summons things to her.
That's true.
Mhm.
But it's kind of the same thing. It's just objects instead of her, like, it's other things instead of herself. And I
Yeah.
keep wondering if she's going to be able to like summon full people instead of just things. So
Yes.
Mhm.
that would be
Mhm.
interesting. I don't know how
Yeah.
powerful hers is going to get.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um
Absolutely. There's so many.
I think we should. Okay, I think we've now covered like high level what we know about signets. So let's dive in now to talking about some of the specific people and what signets they have, and then maybe what theories or questions we have about those. So I kind of grouped these based on either similar signets or they're just like kind of like the trio. So the first people that I had together is Dane and Imogen, because I think that they have pretty similar signets that are really interesting. So I'll let somebody else describe what signets Dane and Imogen have.
And by someone else, you mean Carly, because
Yeah, well, yeah, sure.
this is not my
We'll let Carly go.
I think
not my area of expertise.
yeah, that's okay. I'm here for it. I'm pretty sure I know everybody's signet at this point. I might, like Allie, not know exactly what the technical name is, but I think I know
Yeah,
most of
right.
them. So Imogen wipes recent memories, so we don't get a lot of clarification on what that means. How far back?
And how
And
she even does
Dane,
it? Does she need to touch them? Does she not? Like, that's one of the
I
questions
think
I
she
have.
needs
Does
to
she
touch
just have
them
like,
because she had to do that during the archives heist. So during the archives heist, she kept
oh,
putting her hands
Yes.
on people to
on
erase their memory. So
people?
I'm
That's
pretty sure
true.
she
Right.
does
But
need
it's
to touch them
Yeah, but it's
because
never,
otherwise
like,
that'd be really
explicitly,
creepy.
like, talked about, So it's still a
Yeah.
little bit of, like, a but no, that makes sense.
And then Dane can see memories, and much like Imogen, he also has to touch people to see their memories, as far as we know. So he can see through people's memories, and she can erase them.
And we don't really know for either of them how far back in recent memory they can go. Like, can Dane
Dane
see
seems like he
something
can really sift through things and go pretty far back. He can like
Yeah,
look for things. With
Mhm.
Imogen,
right.
we know nothing. And I keep thinking, like, okay, but if she's erasing the memory of a writer and like the dragons are always kind of like in your head, like, is she erasing the dragon's memory?
That's a
Or
really
like,
good
how does
question.
that
The
work?
dragon calls
Like,
it.
I have so many questions. I have way more
Yeah.
questions than answers when it comes to Imogen.
And if and same with Dane, like, does the
Mhm.
dragon know that Dane's doing it, or does the dragon not know? Because the writers theoretically don't know that Dane is sifting through their memories because Violet had no
Mhm.
indication that he had done that.
Yeah,
Did Taran know that he did that, or can he fly
I
under the
don't think
radar even
so.
with the dragons? That's really
I don't
Well, it's
think so
interesting
because
because
Tara doesn't like Dane. He would have been all over that. I feel
yeah,
like he doesn't like
yeah.
Dane.
Well,
no.
yeah. And then I don't know whether he doesn't then overly like Dane's dragon either, because when we think of Violet and Taryn and we think of Sigale and Xaden, like they like literally they know everything that's going on. Like there is nothing that Violet can keep secret. Like it's just all out there. He's literally watching her constantly. So you have to assume, based on what we've seen, that these dragons are fully aware and possibly supportive. I mean, we're assuming that all dragons are like the ones that we know and that they're all good, but they're possibly not always good or don't. Or we, I guess we haven't seen the instance where the dragon really doesn't agree with their rider. Like we haven't sort of seen that, except that we might see that in the next book because obviously Sigale is going to be pissed at Xaden. Like,
Mhm.
yeah.
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 So I want to ask you guys what you think about this theory. So there are a lot of people that I think that I have like encountered on Bookstagram who think that potentially Imogen has been erasing Violet's memories of Xaden for like a long time. And that like some people take it so far as to say like Xaden and Violet actually knew each other and like fell in love previously and like that's why Xaden is so obsessed with Violet. Um some people are just saying like no, like he's just been having Imogen erase, I don't know, smaller memories or things like that. What do you guys make of that theory?
Do you want me to go first?
I
Nicole, you want
that
to go?
sounds pretty extreme. I think thinking about Xaden and how when he first met Violet, he did not like her at all. Like he did not seem like he had. I didn't see any like suggestion that he already had some kind of relationship with her. Not that we know much about the history, but I don't really see an instance where they have crossed paths prior to their first meeting in Fourth Wing. I think beyond that, I don't know, what would be Imogen's motivation? Why does she need to keep these secret? I mean, Violet can even remember being up the tree, listening to all those people like
Yeah.
doing their secret meeting. Like if she was going to delete any memory, it would be that one. So I probably like while it's a good theory and I appreciate like it's very creative for me, I don't think I think that's accurate. Yeah. But Carly, you jump in. Let us know what you think.
I don't think she's been erasing her memories from the beginning. I actually do think there is some evidence in Iron Flame that a memory has been erased because like Violet seems to like all of a sudden remember something that we as a reader never got like front row and center on, and that
Okay,
was
I
really
don't know
weird.
that. Remind me of what that is because I don't remember what that is.
So when they're getting ready to fly back to Basgiath from Orisha in Iron Flame at the very end, when they're flying back to go help them, despite the fact that
Uh-huh.
they know they probably don't want their help at Basgiath, they she is checking Indarna's harness and she is pulling on it. And she is like near like it's like Violet like telling herself the things she needs to check on Indarna in her own head. And she is saying something along the lines of like that she's pulling on the metal rings to make sure they do not give out like hers did last time they flew back to Basgiath last summer. So the assumption there is that she flew back to Basgiath last summer when she flew back from Orisha after she got stabbed. And so you're thinking that's probably the time she's talking about. But when did her saddle harness fail on the flight back? Like coming back, it seemed like all was normal. But she is
Yeah.
having this sudden memory of wanting to check the
Well,
metal rings
yeah.
to make
Or if it
sure
was that first
her.
one, she was like dealing with a stabbing with poison and she would have been coming in and
Mhm.
out of consciousness. It would be interesting that she would
Yeah. Well,
have memory.
yeah. Well, and she really specifically says like when we flew back to Basgiath last summer. So it's like it's
Mm.
not when she was flying to Orisha. It was when she was flying from Orisha to Basgiath. And it's like all of a sudden it's like almost like she has this flash of a memory of her saddle failing. And I'm like, we never got to see that. When did that happen?
Yeah.
So, and when she gets back to Basgiath with Xaden, everything kind of seems business as usual. There's no like, it doesn't seem like there's any, she doesn't have any memory of this. So I'm just like, I think that if Imogen has erased something, it was probably that, and I don't know why.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
but I do think I know what Imogen is hiding, which is her identity.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Because Imogen
Oh.
obsessively keeps her hair dyed, so I'm pretty sure her hair is unique like Violet's is unique, because she
Oh
even
my
makes sure
god, you
to
just blew
re-dye
my
Oh, I
it.
mind.
love that.
Oh, she makes sure to re-dye her hair when they are in Orisha, when Violet is, like, recovering from being stabbed at Battle of Resin at the end of Fourth Wing, and so she notices Imogen dyed her hair. I'm like, "Who's dyeing their hair when they're, like, thinking that they're gonna have to, like, go back to Basgiath?" Like, that's your priority?
Yeah.
Like, so I just that's really weird that she's taking the time to do that. And she obsessively keeps her hair dyed pink. And she tells Violet, if you in Fourth Wing, if you didn't want anyone to know who you were, you should have dyed your hair. And so I'm like,
Oh
she's
my
I
got an
love
god.
that
idea.
so much. I never like I was just like, oh, she's just funky and cool and she just has pink hair. It never occurred to me that there's a really valuable reason why
Yeah.
it's pink. And when you think about it too, if your hair is like white, silver, that kind of color, pink would actually
Mhm.
hold really well to that. Like
Yeah.
it would be
Mhm. It'd
that
be really
is
easy.
so interesting.
And
Yeah.
then when Violet is describing her eyes, she says that she has pale green eyes, just like Violet is described as having pale eyes by her
Pale blue
mom.
eyes.
And
Yeah.
the only other people that have green eyes in this series are the royal family. So I think she doesn't look like the royal family's eyes because her eyes are now pale, because I think whatever happened to Violet that caused her silver hair and her pale eyes and pale everything happened to Imogen. And that's why Imogen knows how to train Violet to make her stronger, because she was the one that trained her to help get her stronger, that knew that her ligaments and joints were the problem. I think whatever happened to Violet happened to Imogen, and that Imogen is hiding something about her identity. And I think she has some sort of distant connection to the royal family she doesn't want anyone to know about, because they're the only other people that are described as having green eyes.
Yep. Yep.
That's really
Amazing. I love
interesting.
that.
Yeah.
So
I
good.
never like it totally makes sense, that there would be
Mhm.
other people who, you know, a- again, it kind of depends on your theory of like why Violet has silver hair in the first place. I think Navarre leadership was doing some experimentation with Venom magic while
Mhm.
while Violet's mom was pregnant. It totally makes sense that they would do it on another high-ranking official, who
Mhm.
was pregnant first. And
Yeah.
maybe Imogen's hair is like fully silver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, whatever it is, it's suggesting that whatever is creating this, if Imogen needs to hide her identity, it means the identity is dangerous for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Obviously,
Yeah.
Violet not needing to do that, maybe that's because she's had some protection from her mum, and that is why she hasn't had to hide her identity. And I think it really adds to another level that if you've just read the most recent snippet of ONYX Storm that was out in Cosmopolitan, which I've Carly, did you read that
Mhm.
before
Oh, yeah.
I yeah, okay, good.
Oh, yeah.
Duh, of course
Devoured
I
it
did.
about 10 times. Awesome. When we get this silver-haired, braided, long
Mhm.
venom, I was losing my mind. I was just
Yeah.
like, well, like, first of all, I'm like, well, who else do we know has that? Well, that's Violet. But obviously now with this, it would suggest we're looking at more than just Violet that can possibly have this hair. We could possibly have a variety of people that this has happened to.
That's
Oh,
so
yeah, I definitely
interesting.
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I have another question on Dane, but
Mhm.
anything else on Imogen before we move on from Imogen? Any other theories
I
or
mean, I think
questions
that's
about
everything
her?
I have about I think that's everything I have about her.
Okay, good. Yeah, I don't have anything
Yeah.
either. She's actually one of my
Well,
favorite characters.
Oh, yeah. No, I love
Like
Imogen. I think she's shady. I don't trust her, but I love her.
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, love
yeah,
her.
yeah.
Yeah.
She's a bit of a female morally grey. Like we've never really known where she started quite mean, and then she's kind of really helped Violet, and so yeah, she's kind of got that morally grey kind of arc that she's following, which has been pretty cool.
Yeah,
And we don't really know
agreed.
much about her parents. We know that she's a marked one, but we don't
Mhm.
know, who her parents were.
Anything
So
on that
that adds to to this potential.
intrigue?
Yeah.
Um, Okay, so we know that obviously we read that Dane can read memories by touching someone. We don't know how far back he goes. I don't know if this has anything to do with his signet, but I did just want to bring it up here. Nicole and I have talked about it before, but I wanted to get Carly's thoughts. So in the Xaden POV bonus chapter that came out with the paperback of Fourth Wing, I think. It's hard to keep track of like where all these bonus chapters
Yeah.
come from. Pretty sure that one's in the paperback. We're in Xaden's point of view while they're at the outpost and it gets attacked. And
Yeah.
Dane, they're like, Xaden is trying to convince Violet to leave. And like Dane comes rushing up the stairs and he's like super out of breath. And then Xaden's like, okay, fine, like Dane, like take her, get her out of here. I found it so weird that he was out of breath because he didn't even really walk up that many stairs. And like, I think he was running from doing something. Like, I think he was doing something super shady.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's what Nicole and I had, like,
Yeah.
that was the conclusion we came to. But Carly, what do you think about that?
So you are not the only one, because I did like a whole Instagram live and like chatted about this for a
Okay.
while. We like we broke this scene down like to the micro level.
Oh my God.
So when Mira dismisses Dane and she's like
Yeah.
done talking to him, he goes back into that room that they came in, that that plan, like the planning room that they're in, the
Planning room,
debriefing room that they're in. And so he goes back in there. And as far as I know, like Violet mentions that they are like at the top of like a turret of this outpost in Monster
Yeah.
High. And so there was nowhere for him to go. So he's in this until the wards go down. So he's stuck in there until the wards go down. So if he did something, I feel like it had to be after the wards went down. So
I feel like that too.
yeah, I don't think he made the wards go down. I just don't know what he was doing at that point. And so my only thought was maybe he was running around trying to catch Xaden doing something, because maybe he thought Xaden or one of the marked ones did something and he was trying to prove that had happened while he was there. But I don't know. Like, I'm just like, I don't know what he would have been doing afterwards that would have mattered at that point, because at that point the wards are already down.
Yeah.
See, I don't know, and maybe this just comes because I hate Dane, but I I don't think that he could. I mean, like, I just like don't even think they should be friends anymore. I think he's just a bad person. I just think that he's super suspicious, and obviously Colonel Atos is. I think Colonel Atos is like all bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
And especially at this moment, like maybe Dane in the future chooses to go against his dad, but in this moment, we know that he's still being influenced by his dad, who we
Yes.
all agree is all bad. So like, I feel like he was up to something shady, but I don't know what it could be. Like, you know, I agree with you. I don't think he dropped the wards. I don't think that was him, but I don't know. I'm not sure what he was doing, but I think it was shady. And like maybe he was like trying to like read people's memories at the outpost for his dad, you know, like maybe he like the words went down and he was like, I should go and just see whatever I can find to like report back to Daddy Atos.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely think that if he had anything to do with the wards going down, he didn't know it. Like maybe he had let somebody in for his dad earlier, like, or had like shown someone around for his dad that his dad asked him to, and like he didn't like know
What he
but
was
like he
doing.
didn't realize. And so, but yeah, what he would have been running around for at that point, I mean, he could have just been doing regular squad leader stuff and just finding his whole squad and making sure they were going where they needed to do, like to go to get out safely, to make sure that they all knew where to go. So like that's possible. Like that's the most innocent answer, but we don't know. And I feel like we're going to find out a lot more about Dane. Now, I don't anything at that point though, I do think he was doing, I think if he was doing something shady, it was because of his dad, and I don't think he knew better. Because I don't think I think he was so loyal to Navarre. Like he just really was like fully drinking the Kool-Aid, like wanting, like thinking he was doing the right thing and like protecting the right people.
Yeah. I don't know. Dane's a
So
really
that
interesting character, and I'm really interested to see where that goes. I think on the shallow surface, when he came in and he was out of breath and the wards had just come down, your first thought was Dane was involved. Dane was involved, and he's quickly
Mhm.
run to be like, I have an alibi. I've been with you guys the whole time. But of course, looking at it on a deeper level, that possibly there could be a lot more to it than just what we're seeing on that sort of surface. I think I keep thinking about whenever Rebecca Yarros has spoken about Dane in interviews and that she gushes about how he's one of her favorite characters, that he's very, very misunderstood. So either she is tricking us to like slowly soften us up to think that Dane's going to get this whole redemption and we should actually love him, or he's a total double agent. I always get concerned now that like Dane and like Violet have sort of rebonded now and they're like going through the archives together, and I'm like all of a sudden he's had such a 180 change, and I just maybe that is just because he's realized he's lost faith in his dad and he's realized he's made that mistake. But I don't fully fall for that either. I also kind of find myself wondering, was that their opportunity when he rescued her when she was being tortured to say, here's your opportunity in, be a double agent, Dane. Like, we need you on the inside. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Dane to me is a person who is very loyal to like his version of a moral compass. And I don't think he's loyal to people. I think he's loyal to an ideal. And I think
Yeah.
when Navarre, like when he realized what Navarre was doing, it kind of broke him a little bit where he was just like, I don't like he didn't know what he had been doing and he had
Who am
done
I?
all of these things. Yeah, and he had done all of these things to make it through the writer's quadrant and justified everything that he had to do to survive against this ideal, and all of a sudden it's being stripped away from him, and it's like, who is he without it? And I think that's where Dane is at now. Like, he is figuring out who he is truly as a person once you strip all that away. And I think that's a really, really hard thing to have to do when you're in your early 20s. And you're also kind of feeling maybe completely alone because like you don't have your dad anymore and your best friend doesn't trust you and you're just, and everybody kind of just doesn't like you. Um,
Yeah.
so I would be more concerned about what Dane would be willing to do now being so isolated than I was in Fourth Wing. So in
Mhm.
Fourth
Yeah.
Wing, I
No,
think he
that's a
has
good
this like
point.
ideal. Yeah, he's like very, very loyal to Navarre. And I think anything he does, he's going to do because he thinks it is to benefit Navarre. And I think his dad, though, could get him to do just about anything by telling him it was for the greater good. And
Yeah.
I think that that's,
Mhm.
like that moment in Iron Flame when he realizes that, the ends don't always justify the means.
Mm.
And that's where he's at, and he's kind of broken a little bit, but like I trust Dane to an extent, but I worry though that he could be manipulated again.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Okay, so I think we're good. Anything else on Dane or Imogen and the memory wielders or memory wielders? Memory manipulators is maybe the better way to
Yeah.
say it. Yeah. So we're just gonna kind of maybe briefly talk about some other characters and what their signets are. We've talked about some of them, so we won't spend too much time. But like we know that Ree can object summon. I like to say
Mhm.
she can Wingardium Leviosa an object.
Yeah.
Um,
That's a really good way of putting it.
yeah. We don't really know the limits of that yet. Like, we don't know how far or if she can do people, as you said. Like, could be really interesting. Oh, sorry. Then we have like Sawyer and Riddick. Sawyer is a metal wielder, though I don't know that we've seen him use that all that much. Not a ton, really.
No, I
No, he
feel
has
And
like
not a
he's
big
been
character, so we haven't seen much of what he does.
no, and then Riddick can ice wield. And this is why some people say that the ice wielding at the end of Iron or at the end of Fourth Wing is just an editing error. That like,
Mhm.
initially maybe Riddick did it and then she changed it to Liam and it just didn't get caught. Um
Yeah.
being somebody like who is now writing a book, I can say that like I totally can see how that could happen, but also she has
Mhm.
a whole team helping her, so I don't know how I feel about that.
I have a whole theory about that and people came at me over it hard because people, for some, I don't know if this actually exists, but I have a whole theory that I put out there about how I think the relics, the rebellion relics, are creating like signet like abilities.
Yes.
They're really created by runes though, so I don't know that you would call them a signet, but people came at me hard and were like, oh, Rebecca Yarros said that he was originally an ice wielder and then she changed it to Farsight and that was just an editing mistake. And I'm like, I have searched high and low for this
I
interview. I
have
mean, I've
not
watched
seen her
hours
actually
and
say
hours and
that.
hours. I can't find her saying it anywhere.
Me neither.
So I don't know.
I
I think that that's just something people thought, and then somehow it's become canon in the fandom that like she has said that, and I can't find that she has said that. So if someone has, please send it to me because I can't find it. But I don't think that's what's happening there. I think Liam is wielding ice. His dragon's name means ice. So it would be a really weird mistake to make, to be like, oh, I accidentally called him an ice wielder, but his dragon name happens to be ice. I think it's more likely that he's an ice wielder, that's his signet, and that his Farsight is actually connected to his like rebellion relic signet ability.
Oh, interesting. And so he just pretended like Farsight was his signet. That makes a
Well,
lot of
yes.
sense.
Well, I don't know that they realized, because I don't know that they all know, because I want to point out that the only time we get to see him using his ice wielding ability is when he is outside the wards. And so maybe when they're outside the wards, it's easier for them to tap into both, and they maybe don't know. Because they
And I
they say
think
outside the wards magic is more wild.
Yeah. And I think what she said around authors and what they say in interviews. Now, look, so far I have only known Rebecca to be pretty honest with what she has said in interviews compared to like Sarah J. Maas, who I know has lied to protect spoilers and to allow people to have that epic surprise when the truth has come out. But I would not put it past any writer that if they've accidentally put something in that's going to give away a spoiler for the future, that they're not just going to say, oh, that was just an editing error, and then we could end up with a surprise down the track. So I will obviously we'll find out in a few books if it is or not, but I would never, until we have the answers, I would always leave all my options open.
Yeah. And if any of our listeners have know where she supposedly said this thing, that it was an editing error, send it to us. But I'm like you, Carly. I have tried to find it and I have not found that. Have not found that.
I've listened to legitimately hours of YouTube Rebecca Yarros interviews, and I've never heard it. And I've read everything I can find that she's done magazine print, can't find it. But I actually think the biggest hint that it's not is in the signet itself, because if their signets, if these abilities, these runed abilities that their parents, like when they gave them those runes to protect them, those protection rune relics that they have, if those are creating signets and they are somehow tied to the dragon that took out their parent, which was Coda, I want to point out that General Malgren, his ability is to see into the future, and Liam was seeing into the distance. And so it's like one was to see into the physical distance and one was to see into the metaphysical distance. And so I think it actually makes sense for them to be connected.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay, let's get through our other important signets, and then we get to talk about Xaden, because there's so many theories about Xaden. So a couple others that I just found really interesting. We've talked a lot about Mira. Bodhi we know that he can manipulate others as signets, but we don't know a lot about it. To me, that's very unique and interesting. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I love Bodhi and I love his signet. I think it's so interesting and so powerful. So they say it's to counter signets. That's Bodhi's signet, is to counter signets. And so he can basically nullify someone's signet, it sounds like. Yeah. And we'll get into this when we talk about Xaden, but I actually think that's connected to Xaden's ability. We'll get into that later. But I keep wondering if Bodhi's signet is going to finally clue him into the fact, it's somehow going to clue him into the fact that Xaden's intrinsic. Is he going to realize at some point, is his signet going to clue him into the fact that Xaden is intrinsic? If Xaden tries to use his signet on or around Bodhi, is he going to figure it out?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Bodhi is a character that we don't know a lot about, and I want to know so much more about. When we think that Xaden has so much power, he's from the same family line, and he's his
Mhm.
brother. If Xaden has a lot of power, theoretically Bodhi sort of should as well. Especially if, as you said before, that there does tend to be a family link to powers, and so they can go in family
Mhm.
lines. So there's certainly potential that he has more than we're currently aware of, but he hasn't really been given enough time on page to really learn more about that. So just think that's really interesting take.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love Bodhi. I adore him. He gives like strong middle brother energy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
he does, he does. Okay, speaking of brother energy, Brennan, we know that he can heal, but specifically
Mhm.
he can I think this is how it's said is like he can take something back to its original state. But he can't like if you like chop off your limb, he can't just like make your limb grow back. Um
Mhm.
we don't actually know if he can bring people back from the dead. I have a theory on that, but yeah, I think Brennan, I mean, I think there's a lot more about Brennan that we don't know, but what am
Yeah.
I missing about Brennan's signet?
What are we missing?
Yeah, is there anything
Is that
else
what you
about
said?
his signet that I'm not that you
I
know?
don't think so. I mean, like, that's all we know about his signet, but I'm with you where I'm like, we're missing a lot of information on Brennan, and he's super sus.
Yeah, super sus.
What's
I
your
Yeah.
theory?
Go ahead, Nicole.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Carly, do you have a theory on Brennan, or what you think what it might be? Do you have any takes on that? Or are you just sitting in that super sus, we need more information space?
I I am not on the same theory wagon that I feel like 99% of the fandom is, where people think Naelin's alive. I don't
Yeah.
think Naelin is alive, but I
Okay.
think when Naelin, and mainly just because of what Rebecca Yarros has said in interviews, unless she's just
Yeah.
lying to us. But I think when Naelin saved Brennan, he like unknowingly channeled power, like, from the source into Brennan to save him. And I don't think it turned him Venom, but I do think it damaged him in some way. Like it damaged his magic somehow. And we know that like Venom like crave more power, like they have to keep channeling because it's like an addiction. And I think he has that. I think he has like that, and I think the rune shaped scar on his hand is what an attempt to like suppress that need, that desire to channel, so he does not turn
Mm.
Venom. Because I don't think he is Venom, but I think he has like this desire to channel, and like he's trying to suppress it. And I think that's why Sigil doesn't trust him, because like Sigil does not like Brennan. And I think
Yeah.
that that's what she senses about him, that like he was fixed by like stolen magic, but because he didn't like make a choice, it didn't like turn him Venom.
Yeah, because
So that's where I'm
Naomi
at
was
with
a
Brennan.
siphon, right? So he would have, like, siphoned energy kind of from the source or something into Brennan is in your theory, right?
Yeah, I think because like they say siphons can channel, like they like Kaori lists all the types of power siphons can channel, and he's like, yeah, they can channel Rider from other dragons, and he just like lists the sources, and then he just says other sources. I'm like, what does other sources mean? Like once
Yeah,
he got
yeah,
to the list,
right.
I was like, what is that? I'm like, I feel like all that's left is like this, like the source magic, like from the ground, whatever you want to call it, and I'm like, I think that they can. I think as long as they don't take it for themselves, that they can use it
Yeah.
and redistribute it without turning or
Yeah, well, it's
turning.
very interesting, isn't it? Because when I think about Venom, like, and then comparing it to Brennan's, like, magic, like, they take from the ground, they take from everything to get that power. He gives, like, when you're,
Mhm.
when you're making it, you're giving. That's why, like, Violet's always like, oh, I wish I
Mhm.
had a power like Brennan's, which is so giving and helps people and things. And it's sort of the opposite, but it would be very interesting to see that used in a bad way, where, say, someone's realized they can trick the system, where they realize they can kind of take from the ground, as long as they give it to someone else and don't keep it for themselves, it prevents them from being venom. However, it's still a very dangerous kind of magic you're
Mhm.
possibly
Mhm.
manipulating, because you're working in the dark arts, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think it's like a delicate balance. of, you know, how to use it and what they could do with it. And I think a lot of people think siphons are going to be like the cure to venenism, that they're just going to be able to take. I don't know that it's going to. It just sounds so easy.
It does. It sounds so easy.
Yeah, I want it to be
I'm like,
complex.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know. Like, I just sound. I mean, maybe it's like a part of the equation, but just simply like the siphons being able to solve this whole issue the whole time just sounds a little easy.
No. They would have fixed yeah, I don't think so. I am in the camp of 99% of the internet in that I think Naolin is alive.
Yeah.
I think that Brennan brought him back to life with his healing ability, but that it messed him up. That it
Mm.
made Naolin either Venom or something like that. Because, and I mean, I think most people think this now, but like even in Fourth Wing, I was like, oh, Brennan and Naolin were lovers. Now I think people are more on board with that theory because of some things that Brennan said in Iron Flame. But I think he tried to bring him back and it messed him up, and that he is alive, and Brennan knows, and Brennan is hiding it. And like
Yeah.
part of Brennan's like motivation for being part of this like rebellion is because of Naolin, to try and save him.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think it's like
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
about like, oh, mom left me for dead. I think it's more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I definitely think that theory has a lot of validity. Like, it has just as much validity as any other theory. And I basically have the same theory, but just with the grandfather, Xaden's grandfather. So, like, I think that's where the connection to the Venom lie, and the reason why, like, Sigil is so obsessed with, like, you know, keeping Xaden focused on, like, this rebellion and stopping the Venom, like, to fix her mistake. But I think they both kind of open the same doors, right? Like, there's
Yeah.
these maybe dragons have a connection to the Venom. Maybe it's possible that these people are alive that we didn't think were alive. But yeah, they both, I mean, the Naolin one has a lot of validity, and everybody, I think, believes that. So if I'm definitely in like the 1% minority that's like, I think he's
Yeah.
actually dead. I
No,
know
I
I'm
mean, I
not,
think
it's not popular.
it's very interesting. I think what a lot of us wonder is, why did Brennan, for so many years, not tell his family, his siblings, that he was alive? Like, keeping that under
Yeah.
wraps is a pretty big, like, to make them think that you're dead is a pretty horrific thing to do. You would generally have a pretty good reason to do that. And it's not just, oh, I wanted to be part of the rebellion and so I couldn't tell you. I feel like there's more to it, that there's something or someone that he's so connected to that he was willing to give up his family and pretend he was dead so that he could be with the love of his life or fix them or whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I totally get why, like I said, like, I think the
Oh, yeah.
Naolin theory has a lot of validity. It opens up a lot of really interesting doors and plot lines. I think it would be really, really interesting. I like it. I think I'm just basing it off like, I feel like maybe I'm trusting Rebecca Yarros too much, like what she says in interviews. I think I just overly trust her, which is funny because I don't trust anyone else in this series.
See, I don't trust her. Here's why I don't trust her. Because she always,
Okay.
she's like, when someone's dead, they're dead. When I kill someone, they're dead. I'm like, yeah, okay, except for Jack fucking Barlow, who's died how many times and doesn't die? So I don't trust
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Well, and
Here's
Brennan.
and Brennan, exactly. Brennan
Yeah.
is alive. So yeah. You don't actually
No,
you
just
don't
Liam.
actually are
Just
dead when you
Liam.
kill
She
them.
just wanted to make sure that we 100% she kills our favorites, but everyone else is like not our favorites. Like, they might still be alive.
might
But
live,
you
yeah.
know, Liam, he's
Yeah.
definitely dead.
If your
Great.
favorite character dies, they're
Yeah. Definitely not
Okay,
coming back.
right. One last character before we finally talk about Xaden and Violet. Garrick. It is interesting to me that he is so pivotal in this, you know, in kind of like Xaden's life and the rebellion, and we do not know what his signet is.
I
It is
know.
not mentioned at all. And you know, when you were talking about Imogen and how she's like maybe hiding her identity, it just, I don't know, it's interesting to me. I don't know that I have a theory on this yet. It's still like percolating in my mind, but it's interesting to me that she's so into Garrick, you know, and like she's kind of secretive, and now we also don't know what his signet is. It just, yeah, it just really really interesting to me that we don't know.
Yeah, I think about Garrick's Signet every single day because I, at this point, want to know that more than Violet's Signet because
Yeah.
I'm more convinced I know what Violet's Signet is than I do Garrick's. I'm like, I need to know this information. But I actually had another Fourth Wing fan like send me a theory that was so good that I asked her for permission. I was like, can I make a theory and like post this? And she was like, yeah, absolutely. And so I did. So shout out to Christina because she sent me the theory that Garrick is a size wielder, and it actually works
What does
so
that even
weirdly well.
mean?
Well, so a size wielder is so a size wielder we find out in the first chapter of Fourth Wing, so it would have been hinted at in the first chapter.
Okay.
And that's how Mira made Violet's dragon scale armor. She had a size wielder shrink
Oh, of
the
course.
dragon scales down. And she's like, so if you think about it, so I'm like, as I'm saying this, it's basically Christina saying this because like I'm just gonna say it the way she basically told me. So she was pointing out, she's like, yeah, so it's like we hinted at in the first chapter of Fourth Wing that like we had these like we find out what a size wielder is, and they make that like Mira and Violet make like kind of like that Schmeck's joke about like
Yeah.
can they make anything bigger?
Yeah.
And so Mira's like, oh yes, and she's like, what if that's what the desert island comment was about? What if it was a joke? Like she's just waiting for us a year to get the punchline on, because like Rebecca Yarros in an interview was like, someone asked her, who would you want to be stuck on a desert island with? And she immediately said Garrick. And so everybody's like, well, his signet must have something to do with getting us off a desert island. And everybody's like, and she's like, what if this is just like a sex joke? Like, what if she's just waiting for us to get the punchline, but it's a sex joke? And I was like, that's hilarious. And I love it so much. And the best evidence for it was that Garrick he's like, Xaden tells Violet that Garrick gets bullied at threshing, and that Xaden has to step in and help him. She's like, but Garrick, who is bullying Garrick? Who does Garrick need help with? She's like, Garrick is a beast. And I'm like, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. Who would bully him? And she's like, what if he was smaller and made himself bigger using his signet? She's like, that would make more sense. And she's like, and then that would solve a lot of issues, like how Xaden got those daggers custom made smaller for Violet, how they got a saddle made big enough for a dragon, how they snuck all of the imbued daggers out of Basgaiath. What if they just shrunk them down really small so like they'd be harder to see and find? And I was like, this is genius. I love this series so much. I'm 100% on board.
I think the biggest question I have is why has Rebecca kept this secret for us for so long? Like, if he's a size wielder, why don't we know about it yet? Like, it would make sense that we've been like, oh, ha, 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 look, he's making it big or smaller. Let's like, come on, Garrick, do some party tricks. And why is he keeping it a secret? Like, it's so crazy. It never occurred to me that we don't know Garrick's signet, and yet now you've said it, and I'm like, oh my God, we don't know Garrick's signet. Like,
no,
which can only mean to me that it's something secretive and it's something important.
Yeah, I definitely think that if it's good, there's got to be some cool reveal with it, like some moment where it's going to be critical and like it's going to be really, really like just a really fun portion to read. And that's my guess, is that like that's why she's kept it secret. So there's just this really, really fun reveal. But I hope so. I hope there's a really fun reveal because I think about it every single day. I want a payoff.
I love it.
I hope we find out.
The only other theory I had for Garrick's signet is that at the end of Fourth Wing, there's this moment like where Violet, like when she realizes that Dane has betrayed her, all of this stuff's about to go down at Ressen, they're probably all going to die, and she's feeling really, really guilty for it. Garrick starts to respond to her almost as if she's saying this out loud. So my only other guess is that he has some sort of mind work ability, because like maybe he can sense her emotions or something, because she is saying like, this is all my fault in her head, and he says that's not, and then he gets cut off. And I'm like, what were you responding to? She wasn't saying anything.
Interesting.
And so
well, that could
that's
be
the
his
only
second signet. He could be
maybe it's two,
or you know,
so
maybe it's not a signet.
Maybe
it has a different word, but yeah. Maybe
so that's my only guess. That's all I've got on Garrick.
That's amazing. That's incredible. I don't necessarily have a theory for what it is, but I think it will be important that we don't know. Like, I think that they'll probably come out in some epic way, you know.
Agreed.
All right. Are we ready to talk about Xaden? I think it's finally time.
Always ready to talk about Xaden.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Okay, so here's what we know about Xaden. High level, right? We know that he can wield shadows. We know that he's super powerful. And we find out at the end of Iron Flame that he has the ability to read others' intentions. So it's not quite like truth saying, it's not quite mind reading, it's just like this gut feeling that he gets. And that he has that second signet because Sigale was actually bonded to someone. Is it his grandfather or maybe it's great grandfather? I can't exactly remember, but someone in his family line.
I believe it was his great grandfather because it was 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Yeah. So it
that
must
was
have been
why they
great.
were able to keep it hidden, because it was quite a distinct gap between them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, I think maybe it's just his grandfather. It's his grandfather because it's listed as his great uncle, which would have been his grandfather's brother. It's his grandfather. Sorry.
Yeah.
I get mixed up.
Yeah, I know. It's tough. And like we don't even know how much of his family history that we've been told is like totally true, right? Like
Yeah.
I think there's absolutely the possibility that there are things that he has kept from Violet since we're not really in his head, and that there are things that were even potentially kept from him. Like I think there's absolutely a possibility that things were kept from him.
Yeah.
Do we know anything else? Is there anything I'm missing or anything we need to talk about with the two signets that we know about?
I want to mention something about his shadow wielding.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have time for
Go
that?
for it.
Of course. Yeah,
of
no,
course.
absolutely. Say
So
everything.
I think that his shadows are not like that's not their true intention, because I had this note from Iron Flame where they're in Corden and Cat is messing with Violet's head, being Cat, and Xaden throws up a wall of shadows, and it like she says it like immediately like quiets, like stops Cat's power. It immediately stops it, and I was like, that's weird. What are his shadows doing here? Like, how is it blocking power? And then in this new excerpt we just got, it says that when he wraps his shadows around her, it quiets Violet's power. So I think his shadows' true purpose is to nullify power, because Violet is a lightning wielder, but we find out her true signet is channeling pure power. So at first we think they're in balance because she's light, he's dark. And I think now they're truly in balance because she's pure power and he nullifies power.
Mm.
So I think
And
that's what
going
his
back to
shadows
what
are
you
truly for.
said about families being connected, that's very similar to what Bodhi can do, just in a different way.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. And
That's
so
incredible.
I don't think he even maybe realizes it though. Like I'm not sure he knows that's really what his signet does yet. But
Maybe
I'm
not.
like confident that that's what his signet truly does.
Yeah. So it's just so intent to stop and protect and do all those wonderful things that Xaden does throughout all the books that we love.
Yeah. Being perfect.
Yeah. His actual power is just
I just love the moment where they're on the parapet and she's like gone out and he's like, what are you doing out here? And she's in like a ball gown or whatever. And she's like, I came out for you. And then he's like, yeah, but I can rescue myself because my powers will just allow me to gently fall to the ground. So I'm not actually in danger, whereas you're in tons of danger. So I was just like, even just that, to hear that they could obviously break someone's fall and allow them, would carry them down if they were to fall from somewhere. So they're very, very protective powers, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, and I think if it does nullify power, I think it actually also ties into his need, which was to like stop the powers that be, like from interfering and stopping the venom. Like his whole thing is like stopping people who are like corrupted by power. And if his signet nullifies power, then that's really matches with, I think, is what his deep internal need is.
Yeah. And I will say, so nobody likes this theory, but I think that Violet and Xaden I think a breakup is coming because Rebecca Yarros has said she writes in W structures. If you think about it, we're going down, right? We've gone up, Iron Flame, we're going down. I think we're going to have like our third act breakup in the third book. So I think they're not going to be together. I think that in the snippet that we got, the excerpt, I actually think that either they're not together or he's broken up with her or there's some tension or something like that, because I think it was very strange that he was not in her mind asking her if she was okay. But, you know, everyone came back at me and they're like, yeah, but his shadows caressed her. So of course they're still together. I actually think that that could have been like almost out of his control, you know, that like his shadows, he can't control that they want to caress Violet. And it would make a lot of sense if like she's pure power, his shadows are maybe like the nullification of power, and they're like, especially as a being an initiate of Venin, he's maybe drawn to power, that those shadows would then like caress her for her power, even not just because he's like into her.
Yeah.
So I like that
Actually,
connection.
actually, someone shared the most, because I posted about that in our emergency episode, and someone gave such an interesting theory around why they think he was so shut off to Violet and everyone, and he had this impenetrable wall, and that was the belief that the Venin have a hive mind, and that he was needing to protect because he needed to stay out of this hive mind, maybe to also prevent the temptation and things in that taking over, which I thought was a really, really interesting theory. I feel like with the amount of miscommunication in the last Iron Flame, I would really struggle as a reader to have Xaden and Violet being all, you know, going through a whole nother book of them being all angry and not with each other and things like that. I feel like we did so much of that in the last book that I kind of, in many ways, I want them to have gotten through those issues and be solid in this book, even though, you know, Xaden believes now that he is a villain, and like the last line he said at the end, it goes, and that's how long it took, 1 minute for you to fall out of love with me. I know my heart's breaking for Xaden right now. I want them to be solid. I want them to be solid, but that's just like emotional.
Yeah, I know. I completely understand. I think I like 50% like am with you, Allie, where I do think there is a breakup coming, but I don't think it's in the beginning of the book. And I think this excerpt is from the beginning of the book. And so I think it's very possible that he didn't realize that his shields were impenetrable because he's not used to being so powerful from like the Venin magic that he channeled into himself.
Yeah, maybe.
And so maybe he was just like putting his shields down because he was also fighting a Venin and he wanted to focus.
To me, that doesn't explain why he's not reaching out to her, because her shields are open. The Xaden that I know would be all up in her head, like, where are you? Are you okay? What's going on? Like, stay out of the fighting. So to me, that's the significant thing that's missing, is him reaching out to her.
Yeah.
But
yeah, except that she put her shields up though to keep Taryn and Andarna quiet in her head. So maybe when he realized her shields were up, he didn't want to interrupt her focus and just showed up. So, but here's the thing that like we don't know, we just don't have enough context for that scene because we only got like 3 pages. But I do agree with you. I do think there's going to be a breakup coming, and I think it's going to come down to like different ideology. Like I think that they're going to get to a point where I think they're probably going to find a cure for the Venin. And I think Violet's going to want to cure everybody. And he's going to be like, no, we don't have time for that. And I think that that's good. Like they're going to have this big rift in how to actually deal with the Venin personally.
Yeah.
But I agree.
I think they're going to turn full Venin and going to have no choice but to like, well, that one may actually just walk away from the relationship because they'll be like, well, I'm going to go join my hive now and I don't need you anymore. I think that actually the line that I probably felt more stood to what you were speaking about, Allie, was more around when she looked at his eyes and she said they had no red in them. And the way it was written, I felt like it didn't suggest that she was looking at his eyes every day, which you would assume based on where we left in Iron Flame. I'm assuming they're sleeping together every night. They're around each other all the time. So she'd be looking in his eyes all the time. But we get an indication that she hasn't seen a lot of Xaden until this moment, which could be for a variety of reasons. And this is sort of one of the first times that she's noticing that his eyes are not red, like a Venin. Yeah. Did you guys pick up on that as well at all and have any thoughts?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like they're not getting to be around each other very much. And I do wonder why. I guess I feel like I just want to jump to the things that give me the most comfort and I want them to be together. So I'm just like, like they're probably both just have opposite schedules right now. Like she's patrolling when he's not patrolling and and like that's what I jump to because I just want them to be together in the beginning, at least in the beginning, just for a little while.
Yeah,
exactly. Just need a little bit of HEA, happy ever after, just for a little while until we get
Yeah.
into the drama. Like, just give
Until
us a little
Just need a
reprieve.
little bit of solution.
yeah. Okay, so there is still obviously the possibility that Xaden has a third power, let's call it. It could be a signet, it could be something from the rune. Um,
Mhm.
because of what we know or think we know about how the marked ones have some kind of manifestation of power due to the the runes on them. Carly, I know that you have a theory here that you're really excited about. I actually, as much as I believe he has another signet, I don't know that I even have a theory yet on what that third signet
Mhm.
is. So I'm really excited for you to convince me of yours.
I am like 100% convinced that Xaden is a storm wielder and doesn't know it because it
Ooh.
explains so many weird things. And so I think it's very possible that if this is a signet ability, like from the relic, the marked one relic from like whoever the dragon that took out their parents, I think it's very possible that they let Lilith's dragon as well as Coda take out Fen as
Oh,
retribution because
okay.
like she blames him for the death of Brennan. And so I think they may have let her do that. And if they did, if he got a signet to counter her signet, how do you beat a storm but to become the storm? And so I'm convinced he's a storm wielder because I think it explains the storm at Parapet. When she steps onto that parapet and he locks eyes with her, it's stormy out, but it's not raining. And it starts
Oh.
pouring rain the second he locks eyes with Violet and
Mhm.
realizes who she is. And then she
That makes
crosses the
sense.
parapet, and as soon as she is out of eyesight, the storm stops. And
That's
then
true.
when she is at the Viscounts, the same exact thing happens. She steps onto the field, and as soon as the venom pops out, it starts storming. It starts pouring rain. And at this point, Xaden's furious because he realizes Violet has been tricked into fighting a Venom, and that wasn't the deal. And so, and then as soon as she steps off the field from fighting the Venom, the storm stops. And then there's all of these other instances when Xaden is mad that these storms start happening. When she confronts him about his second signet, and they have to stop talking and go outside to go put up the wards, a storm is rolling in. When he
Mhm.
is furious at his commander because they wouldn't let him leave on the day he was supposed to leave and he had to leave a day late, Violet notes as Xaden is coming into Basgiath that she sees a storm rolling in. So there's all of these storms happening around Xaden every time he's mad or
Yeah.
upset. And I don't think he knows he's a storm wielder.
That's
And
really
then the biggest thing that has just occurred to me with you saying this theory is the title of this next book is Onyx
Yep.
Storm, which I've always been like, what does that mean? Like, what is that related
Yep.
to? Onyx, like Xaden and his shadow
Mm-hmm.
powers. Storm is definitely a connection. There's definitely that connection. I can see that.
Yeah.
I think that makes a ton of sense, and I'm so excited to reread the books with that in mind and, like, find all the little storms and be like, "Oh, there's a storm,
Yeah.
what's going on with Xaden?" I think it makes a ton of sense.
I did 2 reels on it, and I think I found at least 5 storms where Xaden is there and he is upset or furious, and I'm just like, what? Because I did like my original reel and then I did a follow-up one because I just kept finding more storms, and I was like, what is going on here? But I think at the end of Fourth Wing, I was like, I think Lilith caused that storm. I think she's trying to kill her own kid. And then in Iron Flame, we realized like Lilith definitely didn't do that. Like she really did actually
No,
want to
right.
protect Violet.
Yeah.
And I was like, there has to be an explanation for the storm because it is so weird because it's only when Violet's on the parapet and it's real weird. And then when I realized the same exact thing happened at the Viscounts, I was like, what is going on here? And the only connection between those scenes is Xaden. He's the only one that's like, Violet's there, but Violet didn't have a signet at Parapet.
Right.
So he's the only one that's in all of these
Right.
locations when they're happening. And so I am convinced he has a third signet he has no idea about. And yeah, and I think it's going to tie into the title of Onyx Storm.
That makes a ton of sense. I'm
Yeah.
convinced. You convinced me. You convinced me
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
It's like
I'm
that is
I'm gonna read
very
it and find all the
convincing.
storms.
And I was
uh,
definitely, when I sort of saw third signet, I was like, oh, I feel like this is a bit far reaching. Like maybe this is a bit too, I mean, how many signets can a person seriously have? Like
yeah,
2 is
right.
exceptional, to be getting to the point of
Mhm.
talking about 3. But that is certainly there. Now that you've outlined that evidence, I think that is very, very interesting, and definitely want to know more about what that could possibly be. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Do
It's
you
the
guys
one
think
theory my
that
husband believes me on.
sorry, say that again?
I was just saying it's like the one theory my husband believes me on. Like he's really, really skeptical of any of my theories. And it's the one that I like
Anything
laid
else?
out for him. He's like, this one I believe. I was like, okay, that's the one.
Right. Can I ask, this is a slight sidetrack, but do you have any theories on why the Venom wants Xaden so bad?
I
Because I
have
think
some, I don't know
that's,
that I have like a very specific theory, but I have some thoughts on it. So, one, I think it connects back to the fact that I think his grandfather is still alive because we learn in like the first chapter of Fourth Wing that you can't start a family and have kids until you're out of the quadrant. But if his grandfather didn't survive the quadrant, when on Earth did he have his dad or potentially his mom? We don't actually know what side of the family is on, but I'm assuming it's on the dad's side of the family. So I'm like, well, when did he have kids? And so if this, and everything that's happened in like the last, it's like talks about all these things that have happened in the last 50 years, like the Venom coming back to power in the last 50 years. It's in the last 50 years they started taking recruits and they weren't just in the barons anymore and all that stuff. And the grandfather's the one that died 50 years ago, allegedly.
mm-hmm.
And so
Yep.
I think that it's partially because I think there is something about the Ryerson family line that they need and that they need Xaden for something specific. I don't know exactly what that is, but I think there is something about the Ryerson family that they need him in all of this to gain something specific. I just don't know what it is. Like I think a lot of people think that they want him to take him back because like they think the mom is in charge of the Venom. I don't know that I feel strongly about that. I think it's very possible. I just don't know that I feel more strongly about that than any other possibility. But I definitely think that they need him for something specific. But I also think it's potentially because of the connection to the grandfather. I think the grandfather knows that they need him for something.
Well, we know that the family Ryersons have that magical chest that just perfectly
Yep.
holds a Venom in limbo. So I feel like that was for a
Just
very
coincidentally.
important family member, whether that's his mom or that's his grandfather. I don't have that answer, but I do believe that chest is significant. We did a whole big thing on it,
Oh
didn't
yeah.
we, Allie?
Yeah, yeah. That
Oh
chest
yeah.
is definitely, and it's like their prized family possession was this chest. Like, it was like had significance.
Yeah, well, the Ryerson family, it says like in Iron Flame that they, that their house fell to the fire, the very dragons it existed to serve. So it seems like the Ryerson family has existed to serve dragons for like centuries. So they definitely have these deep connections. And then they're left with these special chests that can contain venom. So I definitely think that they have like a very long family history of like fighting the venom and working alongside dragons.
Mm-hmm.
But like what on earth they need from Xaden, I don't know exactly what it is.
No, me neither. All right. Last theory conversation. And that is probably the conversation that tears up the internet the most, which is Violet's second signet. So I was recently chatting with somebody. I just want to like clarify for listeners because I thought everyone was kind of on board that she had a second signet. And then I was chatting with somebody who like didn't understand because they thought that the stopping time moment from Andarna
Mm-hmm.
in Fourth Wing was her second signet. And so just
Oh,
to clarify for any listeners, at least what we're told is that that is
mm-hmm.
some kind of special capability coming from Andarna because Andarna is like
Mm-hmm.
a
Baby signet.
hatchling, a baby. Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
not a true signet that Violet herself has and theoretically would never be able to happen again because now Andarna has gone through maturity.
Well, I
Did I
think
miss something
Violet
on
can
that?
slow down time, but I
You
don't think that's
do?
her second.
Okay.
So
Okay, you
because
think that is her second signet.
in Fourth Wing, they say that the Feathertails have a gift and that they can gift them directly to their riders. And
Mhm.
Violet says, you can stop time. And she says, now we can stop time. But then in Iron Flame, she tells Violet, I can no longer stop time. So I don't know that it's powerful, like whatever remnant has been left in Violet, and again, I don't think it's a signet, but whatever remnant of this gift that's been left behind, I think that's why we see her like experiencing time kind of slowed down when her adrenaline is rushing, like when she's counting down the battle and like every second she's seeing everything that's happening, or she keeps describing things happening in heartbeats. I think it's because she's experiencing time slow down. I don't know that she can control it, and I don't think it's very powerful, but I do think there's like a remnant of it left behind, because I think Andarna's wording was just so sus, where she's like, we can stop time. And then she tells her, I can no longer stop time. But I don't think it's her signet. I don't think it has
But that's not
anything to
her
do with her
signet.
signet.
Right. It could just be potentially some weird,
Yeah.
lingering thing that nobody understands because Feathertail.
We don't understand
never
Feathertails
Yeah,
that
we
much.
never
And
got Feathertail.
theoretically what happened in that moment was Andana was giving her power to Violet rather than the typical channel of power that then turns into a signet that is from the rider more than from the dragon. This was pure dragon power. It's only that we don't know if any of that somehow lingers in the system, particularly when Andana pushed it to such a limit once or twice where she became extremely unwell, whether a part of her might stay with the rider. So
Yeah.
So
But
I think we
her
all
second
have a
signet.
different theory here, which is exciting.
I love
Everyone
that.
we're gonna go around. We're gonna like go around the room, like we're in the room together, and we're all gonna say our favorite theory of what Violet's second signet is. And of course, we'll let our special guest Carly go first.
Okay.
Try to convince our listeners that you have the right theory.
I think
No
Violet
pressure.
is likely a Truesayer, but that's based on the Truesayer mythology. So Truesayers in mythology have like these really wide abilities to do a lot of things. So it's like, it's not just knowing whether or not people are telling the truth. It's being able to compel people to do things. It's being able to see into the future. It's being able to sense people's emotions. It's a very broad, powerful signet. Some Truesayers can even talk to the dead. So that makes people really excited because they think, well, maybe she really was talking to Leah. Maybe that was part of her signet, or foreshadowing for her signet. Because there are so many instances of Violet either knowing what's about to happen, which is precognition, telling people what to do and them doing it, including a Venom. Because at the end of Iron Flame, she tells the Venom to stop, and they do, which I'm like, why would a Venom listen to Violet? That doesn't make any sense. And they do, because they're going to channel and like hurt Cat, and she tells them to stop. They do. And then when she tells them to stop and they have to stop, they look at her and go, oh, you are a powerful one, aren't you? And I'm like, okay, so this has to have something to do with her signet ability, because like, why are they telling her, oh, you must be really powerful if I had to stop? And so when you look at all these things, she also, when she talks to the dragons, like when she talks to Coda, he's not talking to her, but she seems to understand his response, like his, like almost like his emotional response to what she's saying. And so like sensing people's emotions is part of being a Truesayer. And so I think she's a Truesayer. I think if she only has one ability within the Truesayer like mythology, it's going to be precognition, because I did this like deep dive episode on her, like all of the weird things she's doing in Iron Flame, and there are a lot of them. There's a long list, and I like literally put them into categories and added them up, and there's like almost 30 instances of Violet knowing what's about to happen before it happens. It was a lot. It was way more than I thought. Yeah, it was way more than I thought it was going to be. It was like, I think 27 instances that I found.
Wow.
And I'm like, how on earth is she doing this? So I think she's either a Truesayer, or if she only has one ability within it, it's going to be precognition.
That's so interesting. And that's a lot of the things I never explored Truthsayer to that level. I think knowing on the shallow surface what a Truthsayer was when people had given that theory, I was a bit like, I know it's been approached a few times, but for me, it wasn't enough. I want this to be a bigger, more insane. And I think there's a lot of pieces that I think all tie into what her power is. But now with you just breaking some of that down, I think that there are links there, and the level of power we're possibly going to see in this signet, it's definitely a possibility. It's definitely a very strong contender for what her signet might be. I I've always had, I'm going to jump into my theory, Alec, and then we'll go to yours. I've always believed that obviously her first signet is pure physical power. It's like it's power,
Mhm.
it's raw, it's intense. I've always felt like her second signet is going to be something of the mind, something that is
Mhm.
a mental strength. I am of the belief that it is distance wielding, and it probably points a little bit similar to some of the things that you were saying. I actually do believe that, well, I mean, I think there's a little bit with the dreams and possibly dream walking, that sort of thing,
Mhm.
but I also think that scene with Liam and him being dead and talking to her, I do believe something significant happened in that moment. And I
Mhm.
think that that was around, well, my theory is a little delulu, to be perfectly honest, because I've gone to the point where I'm like, I actually don't think she was talking to Liam. I actually believe she might have been talking to herself, that she actually can time travel and she has gone back in time, but she can maybe change how she appears to someone. And she actually appeared to herself as Liam, knowing that in that moment she couldn't break and that Liam would help get her through. Because some of the things Liam says to
Mhm.
her in that moment, he kind of says, I'm who you want me to be. Like, that's not the exact line, but he says things along that line. He's kind of like, doesn't exactly say that he's Liam. He just sort of says, I'm sort of who you want me to be. And I was just, that kind of made me, and her just constantly saying, oh, I'm delusional here. I'm clearly just imagining things, makes me believe that there was something more significant happening in that scene than we realized, but maybe not the way that we're thinking. It's not just that she was speaking to the dead. There's possibly more complexity going on. So I do have a strong belief about time travel. I then extended that recently with that snippet we got and this silver-haired venom that just popped
Mhm.
into the room and then popped out again. Now, you did also speak earlier about Rhiannon and what she can do and whether that could have some kind of connection as well, but it certainly sent me on this wild, going right down the rabbit warren, going, well, I never thought about Violet being a Venom, but maybe she is, and maybe she is a distance wielder and she can travel back and forth in time. And when she saw herself, she realized that she couldn't be in the same place with her previous self and she had to jump back out again. So my head went on a wild, wild journey with that snippet. I was very, very excited. But yeah, anyway, I'll just sit here in my little Delulu place.
I mean, all theories are valid. Like they're all just as valid as others because we
Yeah,
don't know yet. So
we don't know. We
go
can't
crazy.
tell. Yeah. Okay, I feel like I have more evidence for this than I currently remember. Because I
Okay.
made a video on Instagram about this where I like put all my evidence, but I can't remember all my evidence. I should have rewatched the video. I think that the core, the crux of my theory is less about what her signet is and more about um so Rebecca Yarrow says that we have seen the manifestation of her signet in Iron Flame.
Mhm.
I am convinced that what we the thing that we've seen is the dreams with the Venom. That when
Mhm.
the Venom is like talking either to her or potentially to someone else, that's the manifestation because it's it's never something that Violet had ever really had before, and she'd encountered Venom
Mhm.
that scared her, and didn't have those dreams. So I think that those dreams are really important. Now, I think she can either dream walk or what I think it is like similar to with Nicole. I think that her second signet needs to be some kind of power of the mind. I think she's going to have the ability to potentially like see through other people's perspectives or like what they're experiencing and in a moment. Um and that actually Xaden is dreaming those dreams and she's
Mhm.
accidentally kind of getting into his mind and his perspective. I think it makes a lot of sense that she would need that because one, she needs to know that the people that she loves are safe so she can like check in on them, but she also needs to not have any secrets. She needs to know that like, what people are thinking or seeing or doing, like she can weigh in on that. I also
Mhm.
think so some of the other evidence that I saw for that is like there's multiple times where she kind of slips into Taryn's mind, and I'm not sure that we have it confirmed that other writers can do that. That other writers can like see through their dragon's eyes. She's like the
Mhm.
only person that we know that can see through her dragon's eyes. Now maybe they can, but we don't know for sure. Um and
Yeah, I think you also spoke about this potentially happening during their intimate
yes,
scene
yes, yes.
on the
Thank you.
throne.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when they're having the throne room scene,
Yeah.
time gets a little wonky, and
Mhm.
she's sort of like feeling Xaden's emotions and feeling like
Mhm.
suddenly like we're sort of, it seems, I can't remember, honestly, I haven't reread that passage in a while, but like it sort of
Mhm.
feels like we're either in Xaden's head or she's in Xaden's head or something. And so I think that's also her accidentally kind of slipping into his perspective, because we
Mhm.
also know that when Xaden is around, and especially when things are spicy between Xaden and Violet, her signets manifest. That's the initially how we see the
Yep, all
lightning.
that
Um,
lightning
Yeah.
that
yeah, so I think that
Yeah.
it's something in the with the mind and something about going into people's perspective. So that's my theory.
Yeah, I will point out in addition to your theory to add on, like I have noticed, I think at least 3 or 4 different times that Violet seems to know what people like when she seems to see things happening behind her.
Yeah,
There's like at
yeah.
least 3 or 4 times where I'm like, why is she talking about this thing she's seen behind? If it's behind her, why do you see it?
How do you know that
So
it's
I was just
happening?
like, what is
Mhm.
this just worded weird, or is like she seen something from someone else's perspective? So
Yeah.
I will say I'll add that onto that theory because I noticed that, and it happened
Oh,
in the blurb, the back of the book blurb, because she
oh,
says that
really?
she sees, yeah, because she says like something like about seeing Xaden disappear behind her, and I'm like, if he is behind you,
Oh,
how can you see him disappear behind you? It doesn't make
yeah,
sense.
that's very true.
And so yeah, so I was just like, what's going on here? So I will say
Mhm.
that I think that adds to your theory that there might be like some ability for her to see from other people's perspectives a little bit.
Yeah,
But
I
I
don't
kind
know
of
what
feel
it
like,
would be called, but, like, some kind of, like, you can
yeah,
slip into their and I
but
think it
there,
would be, like, I think it's a very instinctual thing for her,
yeah,
like, she's just
yeah,
sort of, like, dipping in and out very quickly, and it sort of feels like it's
yeah,
just her still.
well, and it is interesting that if your theory is correct, Carly, about her being this super powerful truth sayer, that could almost be an element of it. If you're gaining
Sure.
people's truth, you could possibly almost go into their mind to see them, to fully get their truth, and then possibly also visually see that. I don't know, there could be a lot in that. That it could be very, very broad, and all
mhm.
these things could be relevant, but all connecting to one specific signet, just a very, very powerful signet.
Yeah, well, so like truthsayers and soothsayers in mythology get mixed up a lot. Like you'll see people being called a truthsayer and they have soothsayer abilities, or you see people being called soothsayers and they have truthsayer abilities. They get really mixed up a lot. They're used fairly interchangeably in most fantasy novels. And soothsayers can do that. Soothsayers can do
Mhm.
exactly what you're saying. So if you wanted to call it
Yeah.
something in mythology, what you're explaining is a soothsayer. But
Oh,
again, like
yeah.
soothsayer, and I
Mhm.
so like when I because I have like a 20-minute story highlight on Violet's second signet. If anybody wants to waste 20 minutes of their day. And I basically was saying in that like I think she's a soothsayer slash soothsayer, like truthsayer slash soothsayer, because they're used so interchangeably, and like so many of the abilities are interchangeable in those mythologies. So I think we're essentially kind of on similar tracks, like with a
Yeah,
mind work
yeah.
ability
Yeah.
and ability to
Something.
know things and understand things, and yeah, and that is
Mhm,
very much guided
mhm.
by her need to know what's true.
Yeah, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Well, are there any other last minute thoughts that we have for this episode that has gone very long, but I should have known that it would have?
I know. I will just say really quickly regarding Violet's first signet. I also noticed that her signet rises up every time she's around Venom, like before
It
she
definitely
knows they're
does.
Venom. So I think
Mhm.
like, but before she knows, sometimes like it happened
Yep,
with
yep.
Jack. So I think her first signet can detect Venom.
I think that would make a
Ooh.
lot of
Like,
sense, yeah.
yeah, I will say I think it can be used for that. I don't think that's what it's for, but I think she can use it to
It could be
detect
used for that.
who is and isn't Venom.
Yeah.
Yep,
I just don't think
Yeah.
she realizes it
absolutely.
yet.
Well,
But
and,
that's all I've got.
even in the excerpt that we just got,
Yeah.
she
Mhm.
throws a blade
Mhm.
before anyone else really realizes that they're Venom, and I think it's
Yeah.
either Riddick or Ree or somebody with her is like, how did you," like, they say out loud, like, "How did
Yeah.
you know so fast?"
She just knew.
Because she just knew, so I think you're
Yeah.
definitely onto something
And
there.
I could see these two signets blending together in those moments. Like if it was Truthsayer, that she is picking up on these things really early and her power is then reacting to this danger that she has now picked up,
Mhm.
that is present. And I mean, and she also has the power crackling away, because I think the venom talks to her and he's like, I know you can't attack me because we're inside. And so she is definitely manifesting around the venom, as you said.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much, Carly, for joining our podcast.
Thank you.
Where can our listeners find you if they do indeed want to watch your 20-minute highlight reel on Violet's second signet?
I'm sure a lot of people actually do. People love it.
What's your Instagram and your podcast?
My Instagram is at @bookishisbetter, and there's underscores between each word, so it's like bookish underscore is
better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
perfect.
It's just a page full of Fourth Wing / Iron Flame theories. So that's where you can find me there. And then I have a what I call a fake podcast, because it's just some in-depth Fourth Wing Iron Flame theories that like just were too long to fit in quick on a 90-second reel. But every episode is just one deep dive topic. So everything is just one topic from Fourth Wing and Iron Flame. And that's called it's called Dragon Readers.
Okay,
Ooh,
nice. And is it
good.
on, where do you publish it? Is it on Spotify?
It's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Outcast. Or Overcast. I always call it Outcast.
Overcast,
It's called Overcast.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
To our listeners, if you're still here, thank you for listening to this very long episode. As always, please rate, review, and subscribe. It really helps other listeners. I think I say that. I make that mistake every time I do the outro.
Really?
It helps
You
other.
get it. I mean, some people are listening, some people are watching. Yeah, we get it.
Whatever. Yeah. It helps other listeners find our podcast. And as we've been saying multiple times over the last couple of months, we're really trying to get to 500 subscribers on YouTube. So please subscribe on YouTube. That would help us out a lot. But thank you so much. And thank you again, Carly.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. This was so much fun.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.